We get it. You're a pirate. You don't have to say I every sentence. Hi friends, welcome back, or just welcome if you're new. My name is Emily, and today we're going to chat about All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace. This book has pirates in it. If you watched my Grisha trilogy video, you know how much I love pirates at this moment in time. I will link that up above and down below if you want to check it out. Basically, the reason why I picked up this book was because it had pirates in it. I saw it on the shelf, I read the description, and I was like, wow, okay, let's give it a shot. To be completely honest, I wasn't really vibing with this book at the beginning. It just was like giving me like weird energy, I guess. But as I got more into it, I got super excited about it and it was super, super good. But before I get into my thoughts on that, I want to talk about two things, the cover and something that I read in the acknowledgements. So first, the cover, gorgeous. 2020 might be a year of a complete mess and chaos and horrible things going on, but you know what? It's a good year for book covers. I am super into the color scheme and like the intricacies of all the little designs. 11 out of 10. Really, really love it. Okay, second thing, as I was reading the acknowledgements for this book, which like I think is weird, but also maybe not. I don't know if people actually read the acknowledgements or not, so let me know in the comments. I'm very curious. Anyway, at the end of the acknowledgements, Adeline Grace said that her whole team working on this book, like design, editing, getting the rights for certain things, all of that stuff, her entire team was women, which I think is super fantastic, first of all. And second of all, I think it's really important that she put that in the acknowledgements because so often women like fly under the radar for all their achievements in like the arts industry. Women tend to just kind of get shoved to the side in jobs like that, and they don't tend to get those positions of decision making and like the power to change the direction of a creative project. And the fact that Adeline Grace had a team of entirely women is amazing. I think that's fantastic. We need more of that. I think I'm all ready to get into the video, so strap in. Let's go. Strap in, ladies. Do whatever. Stop talking. All the Stars and Teeth takes place in the kingdom of Visidia, where Princess Amora Montara is preparing to give a demonstration of her soul magic to prove to all of her subjects that she is worthy to be their queen and their high animancer, Master of Souls. But unfortunately, her demonstration goes wrong and she is forced to flee with a pirate who promises to help her clear her name if she promises to help him regain his magic. Amora and Bastion, along with a few others, travel around the kingdom in order to put down a dangerous rebel and save Visidia's people. But along the way, Amora realizes that there's more to her kingdom's story and her family's story than she originally thought. I hated Amora at the beginning, like so much. Like she played into that chosen one thing where she's like, only I can save the world, this is my destiny, I have to do this kind of thing. And normally that's not my jam. And 100%, that is exactly what Amora was like at the beginning. And if I'm being honest, that was kind of what she was like for the whole book. But what really balanced that out for me was like her motivations. Because normally like the chosen one is always like, I'm going to save this kingdom or country or whatever just because I'm going to save this kingdom or country or whatever. There's like not a real reason. But for Amora, her desire to save her kingdom was really rooted in protecting her people and proving to them that she could be a good ruler for them and that she could lead them into prosperity. While that's not like totally different from any motivation I've ever seen before, it was at least a solid, strong motivation that was like valid and that I believed for Amora because she totally gave off that vibe of like, I love my people and I want to save them and I want them to have good lives. I mean, sure, there are totally moments where she's like, I'm destined to save Visidia, which for me was a little bit cringy, but like I said, her motivations tended to balance that out for me. Speaking of cliches, unfortunately, there were quite a few YA cliches in this book, which like isn't bad because most of them were done fairly well. But sometimes it's just weird to like recognize all those little things that are totally cliches and that you see everywhere. One thing that I was like, stop, that's enough, was Bastion, our lovely pirate character, would say I all the time. And every time I would read him saying I'd be like, we get it, you're a pirate, you don't have to say I every sentence. You know what I mean? Like, it was just, I don't know. It was just weird for me. There are obviously other ways that we can tell that he's a pirate other than him saying I, and I get that it was a stylistic choice, but also it was not my favorite stylistic choice. I mean, that's not to say that I don't like Bastion. I think Bastion is a fantastic character. I really, really liked him. But like him saying I all the time, I was like, okay, that's enough. The end. Don't do that anymore. Okay, this is the last like negative thing, I promise, because like despite all the stuff that I've already said, I loved this book. The relationships in this book developed incredibly quickly, and sometimes that's okay. Like the vibe that I got with Jules and Mia from Unearthed, like that insta-love thing that so many people hate, I didn't mind it. I thought it was good. But this one here with Amora and Bastion was not my favorite. For example, when Amora first gets onto Keelhaul, which is Bastion's ship, she and Bastion start immediately having this back and forth dialogue and like banter and stuff that sounds like they've known each other for years. And at this point, they've known each other for maybe an hour. I'm not super good at telling time in books unless they like explicitly tell me. So like, I don't actually know how long they've known each other, but it's definitely less than a day. There's no way that they can have that kind of chemistry already and like barely even know anything about each other. I don't know. It was just weird to me to see these characters who obviously don't know each other just thrust into this dialogue and this banter as if they had known each other for years. I do want to take a second for all of the islands of Visidia because I'm obsessed with the way that Adeline Grace created each one with a distinctive vibe. I especially loved her description of Akay from when the Keelhaul crew docked there. The pastel colors that were still super vibrant and like the glass and just like the lightness of it. It kind of reminded me of the Capitol from the Hunger Games, like with all the fashion and the activities and like all the quote unquote weird stuff that the people of Akay were doing. And then all of a sudden we transition to Karust and Zudo, which are like beaten down islands, and they have people struggling and people in poverty and people living in fear, and just that juxtaposition between Akay, which is this crazy rich super vibrant place, and then all of a sudden Karust and Zudo, which are just completely downtrodden. It was just a really interesting comparison. I think Adeline Grace did a fantastic job doing that. And finally, one last little thing before I get into spoilers. There's a scene where the Keelhaul crew is leaving Akay and Amora gets her period. I was like really excited when I was reading that scene, which I realize sounds totally weird, but that's really what I was feeling. First of all, you never see that in literature. You never see that because, second of all, women have been taught that it's shameful to have your period for some reason, which doesn't make any sense because it's like literally a biological thing that happens to you. Women have been taught to be ashamed of it or to hide it or to be embarrassed or whatever, like all the horrible things that we've been taught about having our periods. But Adeline Grace was like, you know what? Amora's gonna get her period. She's not gonna be ashamed about it. She's not gonna be embarrassed. And that's just the end of that story. And I think that's fantastic. I love Ferric. I think he's such a fantastic character. I don't know that that's like an unpopular opinion necessarily, but I definitely feel like people like Bastion more. I don't know. I liked Ferric more. He's very emotionally vulnerable, which is important for people to see in male characters. And he's also brave and selfless sometimes to the point where he gets a little bit stupid, but he's trying his best. And he's not afraid to call anybody out on their crap, including Amora, which I think is another important thing. I feel like a lot of YA protagonists, especially female YA protagonists, tend to just get away with everything, no matter if it's good or bad, because I think a lot of authors are afraid that it'll come off as sexist if they have a male character criticizing a female character's behavior. But Ferric's anger with Amora totally didn't come off that way at all. He was just being motivating to her and reminding her of who she is, and also reminding her of what everyone stands to lose, because there were times when Amora would get so in her own head that it would be really hard to draw her out, and Ferric would just kind of sit her down and be like, okay, look, I know you don't want this to be happening, I know this is crazy, but this is what we have to do. We have to save these people, we have to go and fight this person, we have to do all of this other stuff, so like you have to get up and you have to do it. And I just thought that that was really cool. Also, the fact that he can just regrow limbs, like that kind of magic, I was not expecting like the healing magic to be that, but like Adeline Grace was like describing how his arm was just like slowly growing back, just casually as they're walking around, it's just like growing. I don't know, that was really funky. Despite the rapid speed with which it started, I loved Amora and Bastion's relationship. It was simply wonderful. I really loved seeing the development and the banter grow into something that makes sense. So that was awesome. Also, the fact that they actively practice consent, amazing. There's this scene where Amora and Bastion are talking to each other in Zudo after Bastion has just admitted to Amora that Kaven is his brother. And they started making out. They started stripping down a little bit. And before they go any further, Bastion literally says to Amora, he's like, we can stop if you want. We don't have to do anything. Which, okay, first of all, consent king, amazing. Second, Amora's like, I want to keep going, but you're drunk. We can't do anything while you're drunk. And like, just, wow. My mind was like totally blown. You never see that in a YA book. You never see the characters being so considerate and kind and safe and consensual with each other. Like, obviously there are consensual relationships in YA, but just the fact that it was so obvious that Adeline Grace was like, this is what people should do. That's amazing. Their relationship was so healthy and consensual and safe, and it was just really a breath of fresh air. She absolutely knocked it out of the park. That was amazing. The backstory with Kato and Sierra, wow, crazy. I definitely knew that Kato had somehow screwed up the people of Visidia, but I had no idea that he had screwed them up that badly, and like for such a terrible reason too. It was just heartbreaking to read about that, but also just like I was super disgusted that he would even do that. Amora learning that story really just brought everything together and gave the story like a totally different layer of depth. I felt previously that the stakes were like kind of low because I wasn't super invested in Visidia and just their kind of surface level like kingdom stuff, but that story really just brought things, well, see, I go like this, but like it brought things up a notch, and I think that that was definitely something that the story needed to be able to progress forward. And of course, the ending. How could I not talk about that ending? Oh my goodness, it was so intense. I really thought Amora's dad was going to get some sort of redemption arc because of all of like the bad things that came out about him throughout the story and how Amora feels about him and felt about him at the beginning. But he didn't get that redemption arc, which I thought was very interesting. Also, now Bastion and Amora are cursed together? No, like the implications of that are so awful, and now they're in such a tough situation and I'm really upset about it. And also now the fact that Amora hates that Bastion makes her feel whole. Like, I get it, I understand. She doesn't want her entire worth tied to this one person, and especially now that she's cursed to him. But like, it's just sad because they fell in love, and now she probably is going to have a lot of doubts about how she feels because she knows that part of what she's feeling is the curse, and then maybe part of it is real, and then she's probably just going to be really confused, and then I'm going to be very confused, and I'm going to be very sad. And finally, Amora losing her magic? Absolutely not. Like, she was just about to start trying to fix it and trying to heal it and heal Visidia, and now all of a sudden it's gone, and the only way she can get it back is if something bad happens to Bastion, which is really sad. So I hope somehow that will be fixed in all the tides of fate, although to be perfectly honest, I have no idea how that's going to happen. I am going to give All the Stars and Teeth 4 stars. So almost all the stars, I guess. The beginning was not really my jam, but the rest of it was amazing. This was a great adventure story with some heartfelt, tender moments and some really exciting, intriguing twists, and I am so excited for the sequel. Favorite quote time. This one comes from when Amora is comforting Bastion after he tells her that Kaven is his brother. She says, "Fear is a part of life. All that matters is what we do with it." I just thought that is such a cool way to look at the concept of fear. Like, obviously, we're going to have things that frighten us in life. It's just an inevitable thing. But we have the choice to either let it beat us down or to stand up and stare it in the face and say that we're not going to let it scare us any more than it already does. I just think that's so important to this story, and it's important to remember in real life too. And that's all I've got on All the Stars and Teeth. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you so choose, and I will see you next time. Happy reading!